I want to talk about some of the biggest combinations that I designed around. I have an LQ intake on a markup block in here, and we're looking at a 4L80 transmission case. I've got it about 5/8 of an inch up off of the table right now, and when you look at what an Atlas 2-speed with the adapters, it's going to be about 9.6 inches to the back of the Atlas case. So it's going to push things forward just a little bit more than some of the other combinations, and I just want to take a few seconds here and point some of that out. So this is the biggest setup that I plan for people to put in here. It's the strongest setup. If you did a race case or a trail case and a 4L80E, it's going to require a couple things. On this chassis, I did move that front cross member up a little bit. Even in the worst case here, it's going to put those transmission bolt pans within accessibility, so that if you drop the skid plate off, you can get that trans pan off there. So with this rigid bottom, it was pretty important for me to at least give some measure of being able to still work on things, so you can at least still get to some of it to service it. You can see that's going to put an F-body style oil pan pretty close to the bottom. There is enough room to just get a little bit of a skid in there. And on the brackets for the suspension here, I did put some holes in there so that you have something to kind of build off of. On the intake, the LQ9 is the truck intake. It's on the 5.3s and the 6.0s. I've got it mocked in here backwards. If you've got everything setting low enough, you should still be able to get a Cobra head on that and still put your dash panel in. You know, it's a little tight, but there is a little bit of room to work with there. I recommend, if you're going to try to run a 4L80, to go ahead and step up to the car intake. It's going to be a little lower profile. It's going to give you a lot more room to work around everything up here at the top, and things won't be quite as tight. It works, but it's going to be tight for you. This is the worst case scenario of what I designed around, so everything else should be less room than this. Now, this front X, I don't have it welded in. You may choose to just leave that X out, and if you leave that X out, it's going to still be plenty strong. It's not really necessary. It does help with the rigidity of this front end, but if you leave it out, it's going to give you a little bit more room to work around. You might be able to push the motor up a little bit further forward. You're starting to affect the balance of the chassis when you push things very much further forward than this worst case scenario. So let me point something out here. I've got a piece of PVC. If I stick this up in here at full bump, you see how the heads and stuff are here? At full bump, this thing is going to be all the way up in there like that. That's going to be 7 inches of up travel. And you can see it's still going to be pretty tight to some exhaust and everything. I do believe that the stock manifolds will work. These are cheap eBay headers. They're stainless. They're like $68. TIG welded. You're going to be hard pressed to find a better solution than the eBay headers. I do cut these flanges right here off and put a V-band clamp for like a turbo system on there, because it just makes it where you can take it apart real easy and it gets rid of all that leak. And I also usually build a Y pipe and still send a single exhaust down the side that the opposite side of the transfer case drop. So it just keeps everything balanced in the chassis. On one side you got a drive shaft, the opposite side you have an exhaust. Everything is centered in here. I don't recommend that you offset it any. There's no point in offsetting it. That means you'll have the same amount of room no matter which side your drive shaft or your front diff drop is on. You can see like this link, it's going to be pretty close, you know what I mean? So if you offset it on either way, you're just making one side even tighter. And it could be down just a little bit, but also notice that also makes things tight to snake down any kind of tube work for a motor mount. That's why I usually build the head plates. The head plates are pretty simple. They bolt straight on. They'll come straight over. They'll come straight out here, and you'd have a bung with the ears sticking straight off on the inside. There's just enough room in there to do that, and that'll allow you to take a bolt out and drop the motor out of the bottom. So you can see, you know, once you take that loose off the bell housing, unbolt your skid plate kit and pull your front mounts, that whole thing will just slide right out the bottom. You really won't have to do anything more than take your upper control arms off, and maybe you might want to just take the whole front end out, but shouldn't be anything but a brake line, 4 bolts on your control arms, 2 bottom shock bolts, and 2 steering lines. And that thing's out of there way faster than taking apart any of the motor, because with the front X end, to get the motor out the top requires you to take the intake off and 1 valve cover off, and all your exhaust off. So, you know, I recommend that you set it up to where it'll come out the bottom. It'll just keep things easy. But that should get you guys going, and just a little bit of advice. Worst case scenario, I designed around an LQ9, a 4L80, and an Atlas 2-speed of being the biggest combination that you might want to put in one of these. You can see this pan here has the same dimensions as the F-body pan. The LQ9 or the truck oil pans, they're going to hang way below the bottom of the chassis. It's not going to work out at all. So find yourself an F-body pan, get the baffle kit for it, or there's a couple of pan options, and I've got them listed up on the support group, so go check them out. This one's from Tilden, and it's reinforced with the skid plate bottom and all that kind of stuff. Makes it pretty strong. I do still recommend building some kind of skid plate underneath it. And we'll look at some of those options pretty soon. For now, I did design the chassis for the LS to fit, but people are going to put all kinds of stuff in there, so we'll see what's most popular, and whatever's most popular, that's what we'll continue to design some options for to make things easy.